Hello, welcome to the Murder Mukbang Show. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Brittany.
Tonight we have a pretty controversial story to talk with you about. Some people say he was murdered, some people say he was not murdered, but tonight we're going to be discussing the death of Kurt Cobain, the lead singer, vocalist of one of the greatest bands ever, Nirvana. If you don't know who Nirvana is, get the fuck out now. Kurt basically paved the way for the alternative rock grunge theme in the early 90s. And he was a musical genius.
Yes.
100%. So
I'm just going to put a disclaimer at the beginning of this video because this is a case that I'm extremely
sensitive
about and I guess passionate about it. I've always been a huge Nirvana fan. I've loved Kurt Cobain since I was a teenager, and by the time I got into their music, he was already gone. But
yeah, me too.
It didn't change anything. He is still a idol, like a god in my eyes, a rock god.
Yeah, I didn't, because when he died, I was only 8 years old.
Yeah.
So, but, later, once I was getting, preteen age and into high school and everything, that's when I really started to listen to their music and everything. And I don't know, it just spoke to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're doing pizza, mac and cheese.
Kraft mac and cheese.
Milkshakes, and root beer. The reason being is because Kurt loved Kraft mac and cheese. He also really liked pizza, but because he had a terrible stomach condition, he was not able to eat pizza a lot. It was also said that he liked milkshakes, and when his body was found, there was a can of Barks root beer next to him, and they found the root beer in his stomach on autopsy. So that is what we're having tonight for our dinner.
Yep, looks good. And the Kraft mac and cheese, this is difficult for me because this is children's macaroni and cheese.
Did you want something different?
Oh no, because there's a funny story that when he was on tour, this caterer made him like this elaborate, very gourmet mac and cheese, and he was disgusted with it. He's like, no, I want the blue box, the one that's like $1 a box, and that's the end of it. So
I guess he didn't like the fancy things, later we'll discuss, like he even after he became like rich and famous and everything, like he didn't stay in fancy hotels. He didn't like that kind of stuff. He was very low-key.
Lavish things, like designer clothes. He wasn't into that,
He did his own thing.
Yeah.
Which, that's what I really loved about him, was that he didn't care. Like, he was famous and he wanted to be famous.
Yeah.
But he wasn't going to go along with what the mainstream wanted him to do, which I thought was pretty cool. So, let's start talking about Mr. Kurt Cobain. He was born in February 20th, 1967 in Aberdeen, Washington. And Aberdeen, Washington was a very poor area. It had a huge crime and drug rate, high unemployment rate. You're in Washington, so anything east of Seattle is basically raining 9 months out of the year. So there is a lot of depression going on there. And when you grow up in that kind of environment, that's kind of what, that's just kind of to be expected, and just kind of a sad town, and I don't think very many people actually even heard of Aberdeen, Washington until Kurt Cobain came along. It's just one of those places on a map, but you don't ever know that it's really there or what it's known for. So many of the Cobain family were very musical and artistic. And there were some of them that actually did play in some bands. And according to Kurt's Aunt Mary, he started being musical at a very young age. He started singing at the age of 2, and then by the time he was 4, he was playing the piano.
Yeah.
So like that there is like, what do they call those?
Proteges?
Proteges, yeah. Like he was basically like a protege at such a young age. He listened to bands such as the Ramones, Electro Light Orchestra, which I've never heard of. And a lot of his inspiration came from the Beatles as well. He also was a huge fan of the band called the Melvins, which he actually became friends with those people in that band. That's kind of where he got his start in the musical, performing in concerts and stuff. When Kurt was 9 years old, his parents did get a divorce. So prior to them getting a divorce, Kurt was a relatively happy child, you know, grew up in a happy household, or as though that's what it seemed like to him. And then at 9, his parents got a divorce, and he actually became ashamed because, like, I guess not really many of his other friends' parents were getting divorces.
It just wasn't like a popular thing back then.
Right.
You dealt with you dealt with your problems in your marriage, and you didn't get divorced.
You mean you made your marriage work?
Yeah.
Instead of taking the easy way out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, he really wanted the stereotypical mother, father, child family. That's what he wanted. That's what his friends wanted. He was embarrassed because his parents were divorced. And so he eventually started to become defiant and withdrawn from his family. His father, had actually promised not to remarry, but then 2 years later, he actually did remarry another woman, which then Kurt became upset with this because, you know, his father basically was like, I'm not going to remarry, and then remarries 2 years later. So, in the beginning, Kurt did like his stepmother. He, you know, got along with her, and felt that he felt that she was giving him the attention that he needed, that motherly attention that he needed. Because his mom, I guess,
she just couldn't deal with him.
She couldn't deal with him.
Wild.
His defiance, like everything. She just couldn't do it. And so, in 1970, which that doesn't make sense. I think I wrote down the wrong date here because he was born in 1967. But his stepmother did give birth to another boy named Chad. And after this, then that is when he started to resent his stepmother. And so he started acting out again, and they actually decided that you know, he needed to go and see like a therapist. His mother did start dating after the divorce, but unfortunately she was dating a man who was abusive towards her. Not just mentally or emotionally abusive, but physically abusive as well. To the point where she ended up in the hospital for a broken arm. And she didn't press charges. She stayed committed to him. She continued to see him. And it's just like, there's no excuse for domestic violence, ever. You know, so if you ever find yourself in that situation, there are resources and everything out there that you can, you know, get to and get out of that, because that is not okay to do. So Kurt saw this abuse that was going on, and he became even more withdrawn and started to become even more defiant. He did attempt to get his parents back together. I think that's kind of a thing for children of divorce to do, because you want that happy, normal life back. You know, you might not see everything that goes on behind the curtain, and you think that everything would be just normal and fine, you know, if everybody got back together, but
Right.
it didn't work. So Kurt actually started bullying another student at school, and this is when he actually did go into therapy, and then his therapist said that he would do better with a single parent or a single family environment, meaning not going back and forth between the two parents, just staying with one, and that's it. You know, which is difficult, because then you're asking a parent to basically give up custody of their child. You know, they still can see them, but you know, now you don't, there's legal ramifications and everything. So his mom actually did go ahead and sign over full custody to Kurt's father, you know, which I could imagine that would kind of be hurtful.
Yeah,
to
I
Kurt.
mean, he probably felt a lot of rejection.
Yeah,
From his mom.
like that's how I would feel.
Yeah, I feel like he felt rejected a lot in his childhood.
Yeah, and which is extremely sad, you know. So he then, Kurt's father actually then became overwhelmed with Kurt's rebellion, and it ended up basically just letting Kurt stay with like other family members and friends and stuff like that, just because he basically didn't want to deal with it. So that there is another form of rejection that Kurt is seeing. You know, instead of giving him the care that he needs and reaching out to him and saying, hey, what's going on, and talking to him, he just sends him to, but whatever, we're not going to go down that. I'm not going to victim blame in this episode.
My bad.
So at one point he was living with a Christian family, the Reeds, and attended church on a regular basis. But he later then renounced his Christianity and started doing what they called anti-God rants. And he then, the song Lithium was actually about his experience living with the Reeds. So even though he like renounced his Christianity, that actually kind of played a big part in his music and lyrics and stuff.
Right.
So when Kurt was still in school, he actually befriended a gay kid, another gay student there. And so, of course, this was during the time when homosexuality was not okay. And so people started making fun of Kurt and started bullying him, calling him gay, calling him a fag, like just basically all of these slurs and everything. And Kurt was just like, whatever, like, who fucking cares, you know? Like, he basically stood up for this, and he was a huge LGBTQ, I'm sorry, I don't even know the letters, I'm sorry. The gay community rights and everything like that. He became a huge activist with them, and, you know, he, it was really funny because people just assumed that he probably was gay.
Yeah.
And in an interview, he was asked, "Are you gay?" And he said, I started being really proud of the fact that I was gay, even though I wasn't. Like, he basically pretended he was gay, but he wasn't. So, you know, he just wanted to kind of get the word out there about gay rights and stuff like that. Like, they're just normal people, you know? In one of his personal journals, he actually wrote, "I'm not gay, although I wish I were," just to piss off the homophobes.
Yeah. I think he was just the type of person that, he didn't care what you liked or what you looked like, or I feel like he just felt like everybody had the right to be who they were, you know, and live their life as genuine as they could. And even if that was not always good, even if it was about being sad all the time, he was always about being true to yourself and, you know, doing what feels right to you. All right, so I didn't bring my notes today, so we're sharing. Again. So Kurt, from, like Ashley had said earlier, from an extremely young age, he was very artistic and, musically inclined. He would draw constantly. I watched, man, that root beer, gets you. I watched that other movie, Montage of Heck. And one really cool thing about that, even though I didn't agree with some of the things that was in that movie, i.e. Courtney Love's interviews, but we're not going to go into that. Anyway, all the art, like there was a bunch of cartoons throughout the whole movie, and that was all his art from all of his notebooks. He was constantly drawing. He attended his first free concert of Sammy Hagar and the Quarter Flash in 1983. But then he said that his first free concert was a show that the Melvins put on, so I don't know if that was lost in translation through people reporting this or if he was confused about what his first show was. I don't know. He found escape. He was always a very emotional person. I'm not going to deny that he was a depressed individual or that he was sad a lot and that came out in his music. But there, in my mind, there's a difference of being depressed and then being suicidal.
Yes, I agree.
He blew off a lot of steam by doing the whole grunge punk scene in Seattle. He would attend rock shows all the time. 2 weeks prior to his high school graduation, he dropped out after he realized that he didn't have enough credits to graduate anyway. He was like...
Which, I'm sorry, the public school system then...
Right.
Fucking failed him.
Right.
I'm just going to say that right now. Because how do you allow somebody to get 2 weeks away from graduation and then, oh, you can't graduate because you don't have enough credits? Public school system.
And then he wants to be a rock star, so I would do the same thing. I'd be like, fuck you. Yeah. Fuck this school. Fuck the school system. I don't care. I don't need it anyway because I'm going to be a rock star, and who needs to know fucking algebra anyway? Nobody. Anyway. So at this point, he was living with his mom again because he had been packed up back and forth through so many different households that he had nowhere else to go. And his mom didn't have a choice because his dad packed up all of his shit one day and literally just dropped him off in front of her house. All of this is extremely sad to me because coming from a household growing up that parents were divorced and you had to go back and forth all the time, it really does take a toll on the child. And a lot of the times you feel like you're being pulled, you know, in two different directions. It's a lot to deal with at a young age.
Yeah.
So at this point, he's back at his mom's house and she's like, look, you're not in school anymore, so you either have to get a job or get the fuck out. He's not even 18 yet. So 1 week later, he actually found all of his shit packed up in boxes. And she was like, all right, well, I told you. Kurt stayed with friends, and he occasionally, because it's fucking cold in Washington. So there's some talks that he slept under a bridge a few times, but there's a lot of stories saying that wasn't necessarily true. I think he hung out there a lot. I don't know if he actually ever slept under the bridge.
Yeah, it was really confusing. Like, even some of the documentaries that I watched, it was very unclear that he actually slept there.
What was clear was the fact that he did not have a stable home. He was couch surfing, pretty much. One
of the things that I did hear was that he would often go into, like, an ER and just sit. And just get warm. Because if you just walk into the ER and just sit down, people are just going to assume that you're waiting for somebody. And he would sit there for a couple hours and nobody would question him.
Right. So he occasionally snuck back into his mom's house as well. That was obviously an issue. This whole experience that he had, you know, not 18 yet and feeling like he was on his own and, you know, going back and forth between different houses, that experience is what inspired him to write Something in the Way. He eventually did get a job at this resort, you know, local to him, called the Polynesian Resort. That's when he started a relationship with somebody named Tracy Marander. Their relationship was immediately strained because Kurt couldn't hold down a job. He didn't want to work. This Tracy girl pretty much took care of him. Right. And he stayed home and made art and wrote songs and played his guitar. I don't want to say that he was a bum because it kind of hurts my heart a little bit.
But Tracy was also she also was a huge reason why she wasn't enabling him, but I think she was definitely telling him to pursue his dream.
She knew that he was talented.
Yeah. And I think she was supporting him so he could become somebody.
Yes.
Excuse me.
So they had some financial issues, which put a lot of strain on their relationship. Tracy actually inspired the song About a Girl. Which initially I thought that song was about Courtney Love.
I did too.
But it's not. It's about
Tracy.
It's about his first girlfriend. At this point, Kurt formed his first band. Well, he was always playing in bands, but this was the first one that actually did shows sometimes. And this was Fecal Matter in 1985. First of all, gross. It's a gross fucking band name, but I guess that's the way to do it sometimes.
That was
in the grunge bands.
The grunge way.
He would play songs by the Ramones, Led Zeppelin, and Jimi Hendrix. They did cover songs. This is when he actually met Chris Novoselic. I can't ever say this guy's name. Novoselic. How do you say it?
You pronounced it to me the other day at work.
I know, but now I can't remember it.
Let me see the writing.
Novoselic.
Oh, dear God.
All right, Novoselic, sorry.
We are huge Nirvana fans.
Yeah, but really it's just Kurt and Dave Grohl. I didn't really care for the other guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they met and then they started playing together. He was hesitant to join at first because, he knew how Kurt was and he had given him a demo tape from Fecal Matter. Wasn't really sure if that was the type of music he wanted to listen to, but he joined anyway. And this is where Nirvana started.
Well, yes, eventually becoming Nirvana. They had 5 band name changes.
They did. Do you know some of them? I thought
I wrote it down.
No, it's not. But there was a lot of them.
Oh, there was Bliss, Pen Cap Chew.
Yeah, Pen Cap Chew.
Oh goodness, what was the
Fecal
first?
Matter.
No, I don't know.
That was the first one.
I didn't write it down. Anyways, it was a lot.
Maybe if you could figure out how to put the little text on there, you could write the list of them.
I'll write the list down.
Maybe. So Nirvana means freedom from pain, suffering, and the external world. Kurt also, this is another reason why I really connect with him as a person, is because the social anxiety, that wasn't really what they called it in the 90s, but Kurt didn't like people. He didn't like most people. He didn't like being in big crowds. He didn't like going to parties. He was
very quiet.
He was extremely quiet.
Yeah.
And people took that the wrong way a lot. They thought that he was just an asshole and that he was full of himself. But it was actually because deep down in his head and heart, he was petrified.
And he was an introvert, basically.
Yeah, he didn't want to be, around anybody. He just wanted to be by himself in a very small circle. He never wanted the fame. He just wanted his music out there. I'm glad that, he made that decision to share his music with the world, but it's extremely sad what it cost him.
Yep.
Let's see. In 1991, the band recorded the Nevermind album. The lead single, Smells Like Teen Spirit, which if you are a real Kurt Cobain fan, you will know that he fucking hated that song. Hated it. He didn't like playing it. He thought it was too mainstream. he would sing the words wrong on purpose when they were doing tours and stuff because he fucking hated that song.
So this is where I kind of run into a issue. He wanted his music to be heard. He knew that it would eventually take off. And then once it did, it's like he hated that.
He couldn't handle it. Maybe he thought he could handle it at first, but then, like, once he was into it, he was like, nah, this is too much.
But I just kind of feel like if you want to be a rock star...
Yeah.
Excuse me. And, like, he got mad because people misinterpreted his lyrics and the meaning of his songs.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I think he could have gotten over himself with that, but...
Yeah.
That's an unpopular opinion.
So, the Smells Like Teen Spirit, that basically created the whole subgenre of grunge.
Mm-hmm.
Which also paved the way for other bands, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say that grunge died with Kurt Cobain, which...
I kind of feel like it did.
It kind of did.
I mean, because, like, we don't really have... Who do we have now?
It's not a really popular...
It's not. Like, it's not a popular thing.
The only ones
like,
I can think of are maybe, and it's... You can't really compare, but Green Day a little bit is grunge.
Yeah, kind of. But I just feel like... I kind of just feel like there's not the music that we listen to, like, while we're at work. It's the music from the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, there's nothing. This is 2021, and we're still listening to the music.
It's because the 90s had the best music.
Yeah, that's true. Even country music. All right. So now let's talk about a hateful bitch. The meeting of Courtney Love.
I refuse to read this part of the notes, you guys. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, so she just passed it right along to me. So again, I think because Kurt kind of was sort of a relatively private person, it's not exactly clear as to when him and Courtney, like, excuse me, man, that root beer, really got together or really first met each other, but it was between sometime in 1989 and 1990. And if, of course, if anybody else has any definite answers about that, please let me know. So Courtney, she's a musician herself. Pretty terrible, if you ask me.
Actually, I like a few of Hole's songs, but I'm just gonna clarify.
We have a very biased opinion about Courtney Love, and I think that clouds my judgment.
She's fucking trash.
Yeah, she is. She is trash. She just looks trash. Anyways, so Courtney saw Kurt performing in 1989, and supposedly they talked afterwards, but then they didn't really start to get together until after that. Like, she had been making advances towards him, and he has said that he really liked her, but he wasn't sure if he wanted to be in a relationship. So, in late 1991, they were seen together pretty often, you know, hanging out together and basically doing drugs together. You know, it's like those who do heroin together stay together, right? So in February 24th, 1992, Kurt and Courtney got married in Hawaii. It was a very small ceremony. I think like 8 people attended the ceremony. Kurt didn't even wear a tuxedo because he was too lazy to put one on, he said. So I think he just wore like pajamas or something like that, or flannel jeans and a flannel shirt or something. Like it
looked like pajamas.
It was pajamas.
And let's be real, he married her because she was pregnant.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's my next part. And in August 18th, 1992, Courtney gave birth to their daughter, Frances Bean Cobain. So if you do the math, she was pregnant like November time frame. So, then Courtney and Kurt, I guess, did an interview with Vanity Fair, and she actually admitted to using heroin while she was pregnant. And so, of course, that created a lot of backlash because it's like, you're pregnant and you're using heroin. What kind of a dumb bitch can you be? And then immediately she's like, oh, no, they misquoted me. No,
that baby was 100% born addicted to heroin.
Yeah. So of course after that they were hounded by the tabloids, you know, questioning, is the baby safe? You know, does the, like, custody, like, you know, because heroin is a serious drug. It's not like smoking marijuana. It is a serious drug, and once you do it, like, you pass out, and like she could have smothered the child. Like,
yeah,
it just, don't even get me started on that. That just makes me angry. So Kurt, he had actually started using drugs at a very young age, like I think around the age of 13, but that just started with marijuana, and then eventually it escalated. And then he was also he was prone to being an alcoholic. And he also, you know, was a solvent user, which means that he liked to inhale like fumes from like spray paint,
butane,
yeah, permanent markers. No, I don't know. So when you suffer from depression and you have a substance abuse problem, those two things don't mix very well. And it's actually said that his family had a history of suicide, but in, what was it, in the Soaked in Bleach documentary, they actually come out and they said that his family, there were 2 family members who had committed suicide, but they actually didn't commit suicide. One was accidentally shot, and then what happened to the other one?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I just remember it wasn't a suicide.
It wasn't a suicide. Like, it was an accidental shooting of some kind. So in 1986, that was actually the first time when Kurt tried heroin, and then he just sporadically used it over the years. And he actually wrote in several of his journals that he didn't like doing drugs. He didn't like the way that it necessarily made him feel, and he just didn't like that feeling, which is strange to me as to why he overdosed. I mean, I think he used it occasionally, but I don't feel that he was necessarily as much of a heroin user as they're portraying. However, I do know that heroin or meth or anything like that, yeah, you can use it occasionally, but eventually your body craves it to where you have to have it every day. So that could also do it. So by 1990, it is said that he basically was a full-fledged addict. And this is extremely sad. So we had mentioned before that he had a stomach issue that caused him severe pain. And he said that he basically developed a habit of using heroin because when he was high, he didn't have any more of that stomach pain. It all just went away. And, you know, that's just self-medicating for a problem. And I feel like if he's as, you know, rich as he is, like, he could have gotten some more help or more diagnostics or something to help figure out what was going on with him.
I think he was in denial about his substance abuse addictions. And I think that even though, yes, that the heroin or whatever else he was on did help his stomach issues, I do not believe that was the only reason why he was using drugs. I think he was an addict, and I think he was ashamed of it
because he didn't like it, but he couldn't do anything about it. Once you're on heroin, yes, there are people who survive and become, you know, former heroin addicts, but the majority of people, you end up overdosing and killing yourself on it. So his addiction actually did become so severe that it started to affect the band, to the point where they were in the middle of a photo shoot for a Saturday Night Live thing, and he was falling asleep, just going out. And the night that they were supposed to perform for SNL, Kurt actually overdosed. That was his first overdose. Courtney, lucky her, she was there to resuscitate him. And then in July of 1993, before a performance, Kurt suffered another overdose. Courtney did not call the ambulance this time. She injected him with naloxone, which, if you don't know what naloxone is, it's a reversal agent for opioids. And it basically brings you out of that unconscious state, and then you're aware of what's going on with you now, and then like you can get to the hospital. It basically keeps you from dying. And it said that he actually went out on stage and performed that night, which is crazy to me. So,
all right. So we're going to get into the sad part about this now. I'm going to read this very factual because I actually have an entire 2 fucking pages of rebuttal about
everything.
His suicide. But let's get into it. So March 1st, 1994, Kurt was diagnosed with bronchitis and severe laryngitis. And this was when they were still on tour.
They were, in Munich.
In Munich. And he was unable to continue to sing. He flew to Rome, where he received medical treatment for the issues that he was having. And then on March 3rd, 1994, Courtney awoke to find Kurt had overdosed on champagne and Rohypnol. He was immediately rushed to the hospital, where he stayed for 5 days. She said that this was his first suicide attempt. This just angers me reading this.
I know.
On March 18th, 1994, Courtney called the police saying that Kurt had locked himself inside of a room and that he had a gun and that he was suicidal. Once the police had arrived, Kurt said that he wasn't suicidal and that he had locked the door to get away from Courtney.
Which I can believe that.
I believe that 100% because she was a crazy fucking bitch. Courtney organized an intervention with a few of his friends and I guess some of his family. It was like 10 people.
Band members.
Yeah. Initially, he was angry about this, and he locked himself in a bedroom upstairs. But by the end of the day, he realized that, I do have a problem and I need to get help, not just for me and my band, but I have a daughter that I have to think about. On March 30th, 1994, Kurt arrived at the Exodus Recovery Center in LA. It appeared that this was going to be a positive change for Kurt. Now, we hadn't mentioned this yet, but at this point, he has went to the doctor about his stomach issues that he was having. And they had him on medication, which almost completely, fixed the symptoms that he was having with his stomach issues. And that he did interviews after being on this medication and was like, I've never been so happy in my life. But then you're going to go to Rome and have your, overdose and have a suicide attempt. Like, okay. It appeared that the following day, Kurt went outside to smoke a cigarette, climbed a 6-foot fence, and was like, peace out, bitches.
So one thing that I do want to add in there, and this actually came from the documentary Soaked in Bleach, was that when he was at this recovery center, Courtney called there like 18 freaking times. Yeah. And Kurt didn't want to take her call. No. Like, he was refusing to talk to her. And it pissed her off.
Yep.
And they were also, he was planning on getting a divorce.
Yes.
From Courtney as well.
That's in my pages of
rebuttals. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. So he was planning on getting a divorce from her. Like, it was already in the process.
Yeah. So after he fled the facility, he went back to Seattle. A lot of his friends, nobody knew where he was at this point. He left the facility and then he was just gone. On April 2nd or 3rd, he had been spotted in a few locations, but that is the last time that anybody saw him alive. At this point, Courtney contacted a PI and hired him to find her husband. On April 7th, the band pulled out of 1994 Lollapalooza Festival. And then on April 8th is when Kurt's body was discovered at his home by an electrician in the greenhouse upstairs of his garage. It appeared that he had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. A suicide note was found addressed to Kurt's childhood imaginary friend, Boda. A high concentration of heroin and traces of diazepam were found in his system, and the coroner's report estimated that he had died on April 5th, 1994.
So the amount of heroin that was in his system was like 10 times the amount that a normal person can take. So I'm sure Brittany is going to discuss this with you. But basically it's questioned that basically with that amount of heroin in your system, you're not going to be conscious in order to pull the trigger of a shotgun. Yeah. And I do believe that the Seattle Police Department dropped the ball on this. I think that they screwed up big time. And I think that they are not going to come out and say that they screwed up the investigation, and they need to, or this investigation needs to be handed over, excuse me, to the state police, and allow them to investigate it because, oh God, excuse me, because they're not going to want to, the police department's not going to want to admit that they fucked up.
It's been too many years. It's past the 25th anniversary at this point.
Yeah.
They're not going to do it. It needs to be done, and multiple people, high up people, mind you, have said at the least this case needs to be reopened and reinvestigated. We're not saying whether it's gonna change anything, but it needs to be reinvestigated.
Like four rolls of film from the crime scene were undeveloped.
There's still 2 rolls undeveloped to this day.
What? Why?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead with
so
your
anyway,
rebuttals.
We're gonna go with my list. My two pages actually that I had scribbled in haste the other night because I was sitting here thinking about how pissed off I am at this case. That the fact that it is still not being investigated.
Yeah. One of the greatest music legends. Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into this. First and foremost, he did not want to kill himself. He was not suicidal. Some of the closest people to him, his mom, his step siblings, his other bandmates, some of his childhood friends, they were like, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. Not once has he ever talked about wanting to kill himself or being suicidal or anything.
But then all of a sudden, Courtney Love is like, oh, he just had his first suicide attempt. She was gaslighting everybody. Yep. If you don't know what gaslighting is, look it up. But it's a way to make people think that you're crazy. And this is a form of gaslighting. She's sitting there saying, oh, Kurt's suicidal, Kurt's suicidal. And then when he kills himself, she's like, I told you while he was suicidal.
She set the stage. Like all of this.
She did.
The months leading up to his death was all her setting the stage to make this believable.
Yep.
2, he had a daughter, Frances Bean.
Who was the light of his life.
The light of his life. And we've already spoke about this in the beginning of our video, how important family was to him. And that's all he wanted, was to have like a perfect little family with a mother, father, child. Like there's no way he would have left that child behind.
Right.
Having to grow up knowing that her dad killed himself.
Yep, exactly. That's a good point. That's a very good point.
You cannot convince me otherwise, because it's not going to happen. He had a prenup with Courtney that said if they had gotten divorced, she would literally get less than $100,000. Let that sink in.
And he was wanting to change his will as well.
Yep.
To get her out of it.
Yes. And we're already going into divorce proceedings. Like, paperwork was getting ready to be filed. They had a mutual lawyer that was going to be handling the case, like a lawyer family friend that, if you've ever seen that Soaked in Bleach movie, and if you haven't, you need to watch it, because there is some very incriminating evidence that she brings to the table against Courtney. The Rome suicide was bullshit. So in like the media reports, they were saying that he took 60 Rohypnol and he was just trying to go out with a bang. No. There was a doctor that was there seeing him at the emergency room in Rome that said under no circumstances was this a suicide attempt. It was an accidental overdose. He took too much. It happens. Man, it happens. Oh, man. Anyway, so the Rome suicide attempt was bullshit. It wasn't a suicide attempt. It was just another way for Courtney Love to be like, look, all this stuff is happening. We have to be careful. He's going to kill himself. Look, he's already tried to do it. It was all
gaslighting.
It was all setting a stage. She had this all planned out. She might be a junkie fucking whore, but she's not stupid. She's not stupid. She's a extremely smart, conniving individual. Kurt knew that Courtney was going to do something crazy, so after the Rome situation, he completely cut ties with her. He stopped talking to her. Once he was back in Seattle, he refused to go see her. She was literally 5 minutes away from him when he landed in LA, and he didn't go see her. He was like, I don't fucking want to go see that crazy bitch. Like, she's going to try to do something. He probably knew that she was going to kill him.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
So Courtney lied about being in LA, that she had business there. She didn't have business there. The lawyer that I was just talking about a few minutes ago, that they were, mutual friends, she said Courtney had no business in LA. So why would she be in LA when all this stuff is going on with Kurt in Seattle when he's missing? Because she needed a fucking alibi. It is not that difficult to put two and two together. Courtney hired a PI in attempts to take away suspicion from her. It
backfires on her, basically.
Backfired on her. Seriously, because the dude was like,
none of this makes sense.
No, he was immediately suspicious of her because of the way she acted. When they had like these meetings with each other in these hotel rooms, like,
she was basically wearing like risque negligee.
She was all over him,
yeah,
talking nonsense. And one of the things that he has actual audio recording of, when he is leaving the room and he's trying to go back up there to find, because he's like, I need to go to Seattle, can you come with me? And she's like, no, I'm not going with you.
I have business here.
I have business here. As he walks out the door, she yells at him, go save the American hero, Tom. Like,
yeah, who says that?
Who says that?
When you don't know where your husband is.
When he's missing?
Yeah, and he's supposed to be in rehab. Why would you say something like that?
And he's suicidal?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't say something like that.
Trash.
Yeah.
When the PI actually went back up to the house in Seattle, where I believe Kurt's body was already dead when he was in this house, he was shown around by Courtney and Kurt's friend, Dylan. And Dylan just so happened to forget that there's a fucking greenhouse with a little apartment above it. And when Tom asked him, what is in that building up there? He's like, it's just an old room with lumber and shit in it. You can't even get in there.
Yeah.
Why lie about it? Why not just go up there and show him what the room looks like?
Right.
Maybe because Kurt's already dead and on the floor in there and you don't want him found yet?
Do you think Dylan killed him?
No, after I go through this list, I'm going to tell you kind of what I think happened.
Okay.
So Courtney also sabotaged an interview that Dylan was supposed to have with this PI. The PI had to go back and forth between LA and Seattle, like constantly, because Courtney was refusing to go to Seattle. So Dylan came to LA, met with Courtney, and before Tom, the PI, had a chance to interview him, Courtney took Dylan upstairs in their apartment and shot him up with heroin. So when Tom is trying to sit here having a conversation, trying to ask him questions about, Kurt's disappearance, he can't even talk because he's nodding out on heroin.
Yep.
Why would you do that if you are trying to get your husband found?
Right.
Wouldn't you want all of the witnesses to be as coherent as they possibly could? Because that's what I feel like I would want to do.
Yes.
On the day of Kurt's death, Courtney ended up calling Callie, which is another person in this mix. He lived there. He was like a live-in nanny for them.
Also a heroin addict.
They were all fucking junkies. Courtney called Callie multiple times on the day of Kurt's death, which was the 5th, because he was found on the 8th. He was estimated to die on the 5th. I think it was actually the night of the 4th, but who am I? So when I say multiple times, I mean multiple times, like dozens of times called him.
I've seen a lot of murder shows where, you have somebody kill somebody else, or you are involved in a murder with somebody else, and those people do the same exact thing. They make several phone calls to that person in one day, and that is just there you go. Like, that is your sign that they're involved in something that they shouldn't be involved in, because, like, to me, I'm a panicky person. As it is. She knows I am. Like, when my husband doesn't answer a text message within a reasonable amount of time, I'm freaking out, and I'm like, hey, where are you? What are you doing? Where are you? And so, like, to me, if I was involved with a murder, I'd probably be texting Brittany, oh my gosh, is it done? Is it done? Like, what is happening right now? Like, I would be messaging her and calling her, making sure that all of our bases are covered. That's where that's where you fail.
Tom actually went back to the Seattle house, and a note was on the steps going upstairs that was not there the first time he went and looked at the house. This was a note from Callie, written to Kurt, and the whole fucking letter was just weird. It was like it was set up. It was like a fake fucking script. It was like you were reading a script. It was the most bizarre thing. And
As in, like, somebody called and told him what to write down?
Yeah, exactly. And then talking about, Kurt, you're such an asshole. How are you here for 3 days and I didn't even know you were here? Like, it was just setting the stage. It was covering bases. It was
gaslighting.
Bullshit. On to the next page.
Okay.
Courtney talked about this sergeant guy, a lot in her interviews with Tom. He was one of the sergeants of the Seattle Police Department that was in charge of the investigation. Now, I'm not going to... Okay, I'm going to say it. She either paid him off or fucked him. Because there's no way that this man did his job the way it should have been done. Then, not to mention the fact that a couple years later, he was actually fired from the police department for stealing money.
Oh yeah, he was totally paid off.
So, it's not really that difficult to think that he was paid off to get this put in the books as a suicide and not actually what it was, a fucking murder. I already mentioned that. Courtney wouldn't go to Seattle.
I'm sorry, you might have this on here, but one of the things is that his autopsy report, nobody knows what they actually found really on the autopsy report, even though it's supposed to be public record, right? No. Courtney was supposed to meet up with the PI to give him a copy of the autopsy report, but she never showed up.
No.
And that was the last encounter that he had.
And I'm not sure if it's still sealed to this day and it's not been released, but as far as I know, the autopsy report has not been released.
No. I don't think it has.
So, Ashley already mentioned this earlier. He had 3 times the lethal dose of heroin in his system. I've never used heroin, but I've known quite a few people that have struggled with it. And 3 times the lethal dose, that is almost 10 times what the heaviest user would use in one sitting. You cannot tell me that you have the power and the control of your body to shoot yourself up, then take the needle out of your arm, then have still enough control to put your kit away, put all of your needles back, put your rope back, put your fucking lighter away back in this little tiny box, and then pick up a heavy ass fucking gun and pull a trigger on a shotgun.
Yeah, I mean, just like, and you can, if you can take it like the interview that Dylan was having with the PI, he couldn't even stay awake.
No.
That guy didn't even overdose.
Nope.
He couldn't even stay awake to have a simple conversation. So how are you going to have that much heroin in your system and still be able to do all of that?
Even if I didn't have 2 full fucking pages of things to why this was not a suicide, even if that was the only bit of fucking information, that is the only bit of information
I think anybody who does any bit of research on this knows that it was not a suicide.
My next thing, I'm going to move past the heroin because I don't think I need to
go over
you
that.
Guys, you understand that is impossible to be that high off of something and still be able to shoot yourself. He was not barricaded, which is what the media like to say. He was not barricaded in that room. There was 2 entrances to that fucking room. Ashley might be able to find a picture because there is a lot of good pictures that have like where things were at in the room. It was said that there was a stool blocking the door, which is not the case. There was a stool all the way on the other side of the room, another French doors. There were 2 set of French doors. That set of French doors was locked with a stool in front of it. The stool had a box sitting on top of it. The French doors that the police officers came in and that all the first responders came in was locked by a single little push lock.
Like what you would have like on a bathroom or something.
Not even a deadbolt. Not even a deadbolt. And it looked like, from the pictures that I saw, the door actually swings out and not swings in.
I'm not sure. I'll have to go back.
So even if there was a stool in front of the fucking door, it wouldn't matter because the fucking thing swung out.
Like, if they swing out, I'll go back and look.
I'm pretty sure it was.
And then I'll put a little clip in here. Door swings out.
Yes. So now, the way that he was holding the gun.
Yeah.
He was holding a shotgun with the trigger pointed up.
It was basically upside down.
Yes, holding the gun upside down. The casing, however, from the bullet was on the opposite side of the room of what it should have been if that's how the gun really was when it went off.
So the casing, so Kurt was lying on his back. The casing was found on his left side, but where the gun, how the gun was placed, the casing should have come out to the right side. It would have discharged
the other way. And it didn't.
It was on a pile of like clothing or fabric of some kind on the left side of Kurt's body.
So then,
as in if somebody was standing.
Yeah. So then some people, some people tried to explain it away, saying that, oh well, the casing just flew off something and then hit back. No, there was nothing in the fucking room. You've seen, there's pictures. There's diagrams of where everything was at in the room. There was nothing for the casing to bounce off of and land the way that it did.
Yeah. No, it doesn't.
It doesn't work like that. Ballistics doesn't fucking work like that. His head was not blown off, which is another thing that was said in the media. He was still very much recognizable to who he was.
The electrician who found his body actually said that he thought that Kurt was sleeping. That was it.
There wasn't a lot of blood.
Which is strange.
It is strange. There wasn't blood splatter, which if you're shooting yourself close range with a fucking shotgun, there's going to be
You're going to have brain matter all over the fucking floor.
So there's that. Investigators weren't interested in hearing other people's opinions. Tom tried to go talk to which is the PI. He tried to talk to the investigators multiple times. It was like, look, I have all of this information.
I have these recordings.
All of these recordings, because after the first interview with Courtney Love, Tom decided to record every fucking thing that happened,
because
which was smart.
He knew that she was involved.
Yep. It was announced to the world after 30 minutes of his body being found that it was a suicide. Why in the fuck would you do that without investigating? You can't tell me that you already know what it is 30 minutes after finding the body.
Any good investigator will not do that.
That is insane. Let's see. He was cremated 6 days after his body was found.
Yep.
So you're telling me you had enough time to do extensive autopsies and go through all the evidence and do the crime scene, and you had time to do all that in 6 days.
And then you release the body to Courtney, who then immediately has him cremated.
Yeah. Let's see. He was... Oh, and what's really crazy about that they cremated him after 6 days, was the fact they didn't test the fingerprints or develop the film until 30 days after the body was found.
Right.
So you're not even looking at all the evidence.
Only some of the film was
still
developed.
2.
There were 4. I just still don't understand that. Why would you not develop all of the crime scene photos to get to? I just don't. This is why I feel that the Seattle Police Department screwed it up, and they know that they screwed it up.
Yep. So then my last little bit about the actual crime scene is the suicide note, which is also fucking bullshit. There's pictures on Google of this suicide note. You can just tell that it was not meant to be a fucking suicide note. The first large portion of the suicide note is, to me, it looks like just a bunch of jumbled, like little poems and stuff from his journals. And then the last 4 lines of the note, you can tell, and it's had handwriting experts look at this and say, that was not written by the same person. So I believe my opinion on the suicide note is that Courtney had access to all of these journals, all of his journals from when he was a teenager, from a child. I think she placed a piece of paper on top of the journals, traced all the little things that she wanted to trace to, you know, make it seem like a suicide note. But he wasn't even talking about suicide. He was just talking about his music and his fans, and that... I'm sorry, but if you're going to write a letter to tell people goodbye, that's not how you do it. Then the last 4 letters of the note that are in different handwriting is saying goodbye to his daughter, that she will be better off without him, blah, blah, blah. Well, it was discovered later that in one of Courtney Love's journals that she had, there was an actual fucking, like, practice sheet of his handwriting. And it was all the same letters that were in the note at the bottom. Like, it had the I's and the O's and the U's to say, I love you. Like, she practiced writing his fucking handwriting.
She did.
That is public knowledge that was found in her possession. Multiple people involved with the case in the Seattle Police Department have said multiple times that this case needs to be reopened. The police chief from the years 1994 to 2011 said that if he was the police chief today, it would be reopened.
Why didn't he reopen it when he was police chief?
I don't know. There's a lot of bad information, and I still think it's some sort of a cover-up.
The fact of the matter is that there's somebody who doesn't want to us to know something, and I do feel that it is because I think that it's going to incriminate the Seattle Police Department, which, okay, that happens. It happens every single day in America, but you don't necessarily fault the police department. You fault the officer that was involved with it.
Yeah.
And I think you need to. I think the way that you write this is that you come clean and say, yeah, this was a huge cover up.
Yep.
That's how you get in the good graces of the public. It's not a great time to be a police officer right now. Like, fucking be honest and come clean. You know, if you.
So the last thing that I have written down here is just for a little factoid of information. Courtney Love sold the rights to Nirvana's music because since they weren't divorced, she had all the royalties to, you know, their music. Not even the other members of the fucking band had the rights to the music. Courtney Love did. And I think it was like 2008 or 2010. She sold the rights to Nirvana's music for $50 million.
Probably to support her fucking heroin addict.
Does that not sound like a motive to you guys? Like...
Yeah, and I mean, just the amount of money that she made on the royalties alone for Nirvana, like I don't want to support Nirvana just because it is going to her.
So, do you have like an idea of what you think happened? I'll tell you mine.
I think that I think that Courtney definitely planned to kill him. I think that he bought the shotgun to protect himself.
Yep.
And I think that he left rehab, and I think he was just trying to figure out what he needed to do next. Because I think that deep down he did know that something was going to happen to him. And so Courtney, I don't know if Courtney actually like pulled the trigger, or I think that I think Dylan and Callie probably had something to do with it because they were heroin addicts, and she was basically supplying them with their addiction.
Yeah.
And I think she was able to convince them to do it, and I think that that they knew that he was there, dead already when they came when the PI came to the house.
So what I think happened was Courtney pretty much was setting this up for months. This is what she knew she wanted to do because Kurt was going to divorce her, and she knew she would have nothing, and her ride was ending. You can't have your ride ending when you have a child to take care of and a heroin habit to feed. So I think Callie was there at the Seattle house with Kurt when he came back from the rehab in LA. I think they went up to the greenhouse and planned on getting high together. I think that Kurt took his first hit, and then while he was nodding off, I think Callie probably injected him with more.
I agree.
Once that killed him, because I honestly feel like that's what killed him and not the gunshot to the head. I think he died of an overdose, and I think he stayed there for an overnight, dead from an overdose. I think the next morning when, you know, Kurt was still laying in that greenhouse and Courtney called to see how it went, because I feel like she probably planned for this to happen the way that it did. And I think that she had Callie shoot him. And the reason that there was no blood splatter or anything like that is because he was already dead. And the body's not flowing through the body anymore. Well, you're not going to have blood sprays because your blood is dead.
But that is one thing that will show up on autopsy because you can determine when wounds were inflicted pre-mortem or post-mortem. And so maybe that's why the autopsy report wasn't released, you know, because it had that on there. You know, the actual original autopsy report where the doctor or the medical examiner probably was like, this is not a suicide, but maybe he was even paid off. You know?
And I think Dylan comes into the mix because I think Dylan actually came there to see Kurt and found him and found Callie cleaning up the crime scene or whatever. And I think he got pulled into it with promise of more heroin. Because how Ashley said, I think both of these people, Callie and Callie had a girlfriend that lived there too that was also a heroin addict. And Dylan and I think all of these people just depended on Courtney, and they would literally do anything for her because their life literally depended on her.
Yep. I agree.
So
I agree. It's extremely sad. It makes me sad. Like it makes me extremely sad because what would he be doing today?
You know what he would be doing. Even if he wasn't still singing and playing in a band, he would still be writing amazing fucking music. And I can promise you right now that if he was alive today, he would fucking hate 90% of the music that was out there.
Yes, he would.
He'd hate it.
And I would love him for that.
It is sad because he would still be doing really great things, and his life was stolen from him
at 27.
That's
sad.
I don't care who you are. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion on whether or not he actually killed himself or was murdered. Do your research. There is plenty of information out there that you can make decisions like this on your own. You don't have to listen to us if you don't want to. You don't have to listen to, just do your research. There is a lot of evidence for this case.
Yep. There is a lot of good documentaries out there too. Soaked in Bleach is one of the ones that we watched. And then which one was the other one that you watched?
I watched Montage and Heck, which I liked because it showed a lot of his childhood. Like they had real childhood videos and stuff of him on there. But there was also interviews of Courtney. Like that movie was endorsed by Courtney Love. So of course the ending was geared towards more suicide.
Yeah, of course it was.
But even in the interviews on that movie, she was still shady as fuck.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Because she's a killer.
All right.
This has been the Murder Mukbang Show. You kill them.
We grill them.
We will see you guys. I don't know when. Sorry, we're inconsistent.
Yeah. Sorry.
Things will get better now that it's not wintertime.
Yep.
So, yeah, we'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.